The first time I met Felicia Karen Prescott, she was handing out welcome home cupcakes at our block party. She wore a crisp blazer and a name badge that read HOA President, her perfect hair gleaming in the sun. My wife, Jenna, and I had just moved in with our 6-year-old daughter, Mia, and we were exhausted after weeks of packing. Karen's sugary gesture felt like a lifeline. Over the next month, though, her kindness curdled into something darker. She showed up at our door unannounced, insisting on inspecting Mia's playroom for safety hazards. She lectured Jenna, who works from home, about having clean carpets and choked up windowsills. When mascara-streaked fingerprints showed up on Mia's bedroom window, Karen cornered us at the mailbox. Her voice low. You never know which neighbors are watching. Best to keep things spotless. Then came the phone calls. A deep-voiced man claiming to be with Child Protective Services called late one night. He said there'd been a report about neglect. My heart leaped into my throat. Landscape lights flickered outside my study window. The man kept me on the line while he verified details: name, birth date, social security. I refused to give anything until he promised to send an inspector. The call ended abruptly. The next morning, 2 grim-looking men in dark jackets appeared on our front porch. Without introduction, they flashed badges and said they were there for an urgent CPS evaluation. My pulse hammered. I ushered them inside, but Jenna held Mia back at the door. The men asked to see Mia's play area. I pointed down the hall. They followed. Before I knew it, they'd whisked Mia away in a black SUV with tinted windows. No inspector left his card, no CPS paperwork in hand. Panic flooded me. Jenna and I called 911. The dispatcher told us to stay put and wait for officers. We ran to our neighbor's house for help. By the time we returned, minutes later, the SUV was gone. No license plate, no identifying marks. I knelt on the driveway, shaking, and kept calling Mia's name until my throat burned. The police arrived and took our statement. They said it sounded like kidnapping, but with no witnesses and no footage, it was our word against theirs. I barely slept that night, replaying Mia's last smile at breakfast. The next day, Karen knocked. I heard about the incident, she said, eyes wide. If there's anything I can do. Jen and I stared. She offered to organize a search party, distribute flyers, contact local schools. She seemed sincere until news broke of a second abduction in our subdivision. Another child taken in the same black SUV. Fear soared. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting in the clubhouse. I showed up, raw and sleepless, determined to find Mia. Karen paced at the front, clutching her clipboard. I've hired private investigators, she announced. I'll cover all expenses, coordinate volunteers, and handle PR. Relief ward with suspicion. Only hours later, the PIs reported 0 leads. The black SUV remained invisible to license readers. The kidnappers were ghosts. At home, I intercepted a package addressed to Karen. A small envelope with Mia's hair bow inside and a note. Stop looking, or she's lost. My blood ran cold. I called the number scribbled on the note. A distorted voice snarled, Your kid's safe, if you follow our rules. I hung up. Then I remembered the nanny cam we'd installed in Mia's bedroom. I raced to the monitor, only to find static. That camera had been online every day until that morning. Someone had cut our Wi-Fi connection. I ran to the router. A green light glowed on one port, but the cable was loose. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. I confronted Karen at dawn. She stepped out of her SUV, oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes. You look tired, she said softly. I'm helping. I didn't trust her. I told her to leave and called the PIs to check her house, but they found nothing. No Mia, no evidence, just her sterling record as HOA president. 3 days passed. The police were no closer, and our neighbors whispered that Jenna and I must be hiding something. Karen selected 4 board members to investigate neighbor complaints. Everyone except us. On the 4th morning, we awoke to our front door splintered. Inside, our living room was empty. The TV, our laptops, the family photos, all gone except one, Mia's favorite stuffed rabbit sitting on the couch. A final note lay on the coffee table, written in Karen's precise script. It's too late to save her. Goodbye. I sank to my knees, rage and despair coursing through me. But amid the chaos, one thought burned clear. Karen was the only one with the power, the motive, and the means. I would find Mia and unmask her once and for all. The morning after the break-in, our home felt violated beyond repair. My hands trembled as I dialed Karen's number. but she didn't pick up. Instead, I found her waiting in the driveway when I stepped outside. Sunglasses on, arms folded, expression unreadable. "I'm sorry about last night," she said too calmly. "My security team should have deterred whoever did that." She glanced at the empty window where Mia's butterfly curtains once fluttered. "I'll personally pay for new cameras and guards, whatever it takes." I narrowed my eyes. "Then explain the letter in your mailbox, your own handwriting." I shoved the crumpled note toward her. Her lips pressed into a hard line, but she didn't deny it. Before I could demand answers, Karen raised a hand. "Let's work together," she urged. "I'll help find her." Desperate, I agreed to one meeting. We sat in our living room, whiteboard and maps spread before us. Karen pointed to locations: wooded lot behind the park, old mill near the train tracks, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. "My PIs checked all three," she said, tapping each spot with her pen. "No sign, but I have another lead." She handed me a grainy photo, a black SUV parked near the mill, time-stamped 2 days ago. I recognized the overpass in the background. I'd driven that route to work. Karen traced a route from my office to the mill that matched morning commute patterns. "They could be watching you," she whispered. Jenna's phone buzzed, an alert from our neighbor watch group. "Suspicious vans spotted near Elm and 5th at 3 a.m. I glanced at Karen, who raised a single eyebrow. She'd organized that neighborhood patrol. "Good," she said. "They'll keep an eye out." Over the next 24 hours, we drove every road in the photo's radius. We stopped at rest areas, parking lots, even a 24-hour diner. No sign of Mia or the kidnappers. Frustration mounted. Guilt gnawed at me for trusting Karen's guesses. That evening, I watched our backup camera footage. At 2:03 a.m., I saw 3 figures exit a black SUV and split up. The second figure, a woman wearing a dark coat and a flower-patterned scarf, paused at our gate, looked around, then slipped inside. That silhouette, it was Karen. My blood ran cold. I froze the frame and studied her profile. The tilt of her head, the way she walked. It matched the VHS security tape from the HOA meeting when she volunteered to coordinate the search. She'd been there every step, steering investigators away from the mill and warehouses, feeding us false leads. I showed the clip to Jenna. Her face turned ashen. "She trapped us in her little game," Jenna whispered. Voice broken. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a cage. We called the police immediately. This time they believed us. Detective Ramirez grilled Karen that night at the station, playing the footage back. Karen's facade cracked. Her glare turned feral, but she denied everything. "That's not me," she spat. "You've got the wrong person." Ramirez didn't buy it. He obtained a search warrant for Karen's home. At dawn, officers stormed her condo, locked safes, coded computers, and a hidden wall panel concealing a trove of children's belongings. Mia's bracelet, her favorite storybook, and a small pink hair tie. Each item bore faint traces of our apartment's wallpaper pattern. They also found a ledger, names, addresses, phone numbers, neighbors she'd targeted over the years. Every kidnapping tip, every threatening letter, every fine she'd issued, recorded in precise script. At the bottom of a page, Mia's name, circled twice. As they cuffed her, Karen's perfect control shattered. "You'll never find her," she shrieked. "She's mine." Her eyes gleamed with fanaticism. We stood on the sidewalk numb. The door swung shut behind Karen, her clipboard left on the floor. Detective Ramirez looked at us with sympathy. "We'll find your daughter," he promised. But despite the breakthrough, Mia was still out there, somewhere in the network Karen had built, and now we knew the extent of her plan. It wasn't 2 thugs acting alone. It was an entire web of deception woven by the woman who claimed to protect our neighborhood. With Karen in custody, the police intensified the search. Detective Ramirez assembled a task force, uniformed officers canvassing every warehouse, private investigators tracing the black SUV's service records, and cyber teams tracking ransom calls. Jenna and I sat in the command center, maps, photos, and evidence boards plastering every wall, helpless yet determined. On day 2, a ransom demand arrived via an untraceable burner phone. $200,000 by midnight. No cops. It named a drop point at an abandoned marina 10 miles away. The clock started ticking. Ramirez deployed an undercover team to the marina as Jenna and I watched a live feed from inside a covert RV. Under the orange glow of sunset, 3 figures emerged from a dinghy, the 2 kidnappers flanking a small, bundled shape. Mia. My chest tightened when I saw her bright pink vest. Suddenly, headlights blazed down the deserted dock. The kidnappers panicked, dragging Mia toward the shadows. Spanish voices shouted. The undercover officers moved in, but then traffic surged from the highway. 4 unmarked SUVs screeched to a stop. Karen's voice crackled over a megaphone. "Stop! It's my ransom! Stand down or she dies!" Confusion erupted. Detective Ramirez realized Karen had orchestrated a double cross, using our dispatch to reroute the SWAT team and reinforce her hold. The undercover unit hesitated. The kidnappers brandished guns. Mia whimpered. I pounded the RV's side, screaming. Jenna covered her face, tears streaming. Ramirez cursed under his breath and ordered the marina cordoned off. He signaled the negotiator to stall. In that heartbeat of chaos, I recognized one kidnapper's gait. The shorter man's limp matched the hushed video from our doorbell camera. I snapped photos of the SUV's license plates and relayed them to Ramirez. 2 rented to Karen's husband's shell company, 1 from her private account. Outside, the renegade SUVs revved. Karen's megaphone lit up with static. "You're trespassing on private property!" But Ramirez cut the megaphone feed and switched to loud hail. "Drop your weapons! You have 5 seconds!" Time slowed. The kidnappers glanced at Karen, then at each other, then lowered their guns. The SWAT team moved in, disarming them. In the flurry, an officer scooped up Mia. I raced forward, hugging her so tight I could hardly breathe. Karen screamed from her SUV, "No, she's mine!" But the officers cuffed her outside the dinghy, her hair plastered to her forehead, eyes wild. Mia clutched my shirt, sobbing. Back at the station, Ramirez laid out the full conspiracy. Karen had hired the kidnappers, set up fake CPS calls, manipulated the HOA search, and used her resources to isolate us. The aborted marina drop was her last gambit, using her private muscle to extort us while the police were tied up in red tape. Jenna held Mia in our arms as Ramirez filed final charges: kidnapping, extortion, conspiracy, and child endangerment. The 2 hired men pled guilty. Karen faced life imprisonment. Hours later, we sat in our driveway, Mia asleep in her car seat. The sun rose over the street she once ruled. I looked at Karen's empty house across the cul-de-sac, a dark silhouette against dawn. I whispered to Jenna, "It's over." But as relief washed over me, one thought lingered. The web of deceit Karen wove ran deeper than we knew, and unraveling it would take more than a single bust. The weeks after Mia's rescue were a blur of interviews and investigations. Karen sat in a high-security cell, her courtroom rants muted by a gag order. But even behind bars, her influence rippled through our neighborhood. Our lawsuit against Karen and her cronies ballooned into a class action suit for all families she terrorized. Thankfully, Jenna and I weren't alone. 5 other parents joined us, sharing stories of death threats, harassment, and petty fines turned to smokescreens for darker deeds. We pooled resources, hired a formidable legal team, and filed for maximum damages. Meanwhile, Mia began therapy for post-traumatic stress. The world felt both safe, her dad and I never left her side, and unsafe. Every knock at the door made her flinch. We moved her bed out of the guest room, blocking the hallway view, and installed new locks on all windows. At night, I'd hold her until she slept, whispering, "You're home now. I'm right here." The HOA dissolved under scandal. The clubhouse, once a symbol of Karen's control, was renamed the Freedom Hall, opening as a crisis center for families recovering from trauma. The first board meeting elected Mr. Ramirez, our lead detective, as an honorary advisor. He advocated permanent protections, background checks for anyone in a leadership position, community-wide security audits, and an emergency task force to respond to threats within hours, not days. Despite the reforms, rumors persisted. Some believed Karen had allies hiding in plain sight, neighbors who'd benefited from her schemes, silent watchers waiting for her return. To stamp out doubt, we organized a neighborhood truth day. Each resident shared one small victory over Karen's reign: canceled fines refunded, hidden cameras removed, forged documents exposed. By afternoon, the air felt lighter, truth triumphing over fear. Then came an unexpected twist. During depositions, one of Karen's ex-associates, an HVAC technician, testified that Karen had hidden a final ledger in the attic of her late mother's house 2 towns over. It allegedly contained records of unreported crimes, attempted kidnappings, financial blackmail, and even threats to local officials. We obtained a new search warrant and flew to that house. Dust motes danced in golden light as we crept up the creaky stairs. Behind a false wall panel, we found a locked box. Inside, meticulous ledgers, photos of children's belongings, bank statements tied to shell accounts, and a USB drive labeled for future plans. It detailed fresh targets, families whose homes were next on Karen's list. I slipped the drive into my pocket, my pulse racing. These revelations meant the danger hadn't ended. It had only been paused. The network Karen built was bigger than we imagined. She'd started recruiting before I even met her. Back home, I met with Ramirez and our lawyers. We agreed, release the files to the FBI, expand the investigation beyond our subdivision, and warn every nearby community. The ledgers became evidence in a federal case, potentially implicating dozens. As winter thawed into spring, we held a small ceremony at Freedom Hall. Mia, now smiling more, released a cluster of balloons into the sky, a symbol of her freedom. I watched them drift upward and thought of those still trapped by silence and fear. Karen's legacy would forever be stained by her crimes. Yet our response, our unity, resilience, and refusal to back down, proved far stronger. Mia hugged me tight and whispered, "We're safe now, right?" I knelt, looked into her brave eyes, and said, "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe, and we'll protect each other always." The end.